Matt DiBenedetto reveals that he's continuing to work on his 2024 NASCAR plans, and RFK may be returning to the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2024. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to go ahead and start and talk about starter. As it was reported on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving by Adam Stern that there are some new designs in jackets that have been released, and also new caps as well that have been released as well that you can now buy. I have to say these retro-looking Letterman jackets look really awesome, and I think there's some really cool designs that have been coming out from Starter as well. I think these look really sick, and they look really awesome overall, to be honest with you. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Mahindra. As it was reported by Adam Stern, the Mahindra is renewing its deal with Trackhouse Racing that it uses to promote its U.S. tractor business. Mahindra has been a sponsor of Trackhouse Racing for the last few years, sponsoring Chase Briscoe for majority races the last few years. And it's really cool to see if they're going to be sticking around. The details were not disclosed on how long the deal is going to be, but it's really awesome and great to see that Mahindra is going to be sticking around and working with Trackhouse Racing for the foreseeable future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Sebastian Welden. As over the last couple days, I believe on Tuesday or Wednesday last week, Sebastian Welden was able to win the 2023 Skip Barber Racing School Championship. Sebastian Welden, of course, is the son of the late Dan Welden. He's a very talented driver. I believe he's only 13 or 14 years old. And Sebastian Welden is a very talented driver whose ultimate goal is to go in IndyCar and win a championship. This is a fantastic and incredible accomplishment for Sebastian Welden, and massive congratulations to him on winning this Skip Barber Championship. Really awesome and great stuff. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jack Crawford. As it was officially announced, I believe yesterday, that Jack Crawford will be joining DAMS Racing in 2024 in Formula 2. Jack Crawford, for those who do not know, currently competes in Formula 2, but it was a release at the end of last year. He's coming off having one win in Formula 2 and finishing 13th in the championship. Jack does have a lot of talent, and I think he'll do a solid job with DAMS Racing. The goal is to improve from what he did in 2022 and try to get another victory. Nonetheless, it's a great accomplishment for him, and congratulations to him on getting an opportunity chance to run for DAMS Racing in 2024. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Larson. Now, every single year during the offseason, Kyle Larson tends to run a lot of sprint car races, and it's no exception this year, as Kyle Larson competed in the Turkey Night Grand Prix and was able to pick up his fourth Turkey Night Grand Prix victory here at Ventura Raceway. Massive congratulations to Kyle Larson. Obviously, Kyle Larson goes and runs as many races as possible to get reps and get prepared for every single season, and once again, he picks up another victory. So this is a huge accomplishment for him, and massive congratulations to Kyle Larson on winning the Turkey Night GP for the fourth time. Massive and incredible accomplishment for him. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about NASCAR Manager. As there was a report by Adam Stern, I believe on Wednesday or Thursday, that NASCAR Manager is Hutch Games' racing management title that enters early access for Android. I believe NASCAR Manager may have been around in the past in different entities, but it's interesting to see that there is a new NASCAR game going to be coming to the Android devices. Unfortunately, none of the real-life drivers, I believe none of the real-life cars, are going to be part of this game. If you're going to have a game on mobile that is going to be able to want to grow, you're going to basically have to have real-life drivers in there for people to be able to buy, and unfortunately that is not the case this time around. I do like there's a new NASCAR game coming to play. I just don't think it's going to be something that a lot of fans are really going to be going after to try to buy, if that makes any sense. It's still cool, though, to see that there is a new NASCAR game that's going to be on mobile. I just wish real-life drivers were involved with that, to be honest with you. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Motorsports Games. As there was a report, I think, by Justin Pettisher that Motorsports Games is about to be delisted from the NASDAQ. For those who don't know, Motorsports Games has had stock in I believe the stock exchange or other companies in as well in the NASDAQ as well. Obviously, Motorsports Games have been in the news over the last couple months. They've sold a NASCAR license to iRacing. IndyCar has terminated both of the agreements they had with Motorsports Games, and multiple other things have been happening with this company as well. There's a really good chance and possibility that they've got a Le Mans game that's supposed to be coming out on February 20th for 2024, but a lot of people in the industry do believe there's a good chance that that they're not even going to last until the end of this series. They may run out of cash and run out of money. They tend to lose, I think, $1.1 million a year, and they're on the verge of going bankrupt at this point, which good riddance to Motorsports Games. I don't have any respect for the company. They've done a lot of bad things. Their work environment, from what I understand, was really, really bad in general. It's a shame the IndyCar game's not coming out, but again, when you don't have any money coming into play, what do you expect? So really unfortunate situation. It's happening over there, but it's not a major shock to see what's going on with Motorsports Games, and honestly, I'm not shocked and surprised to see the bad stuff that's going on at MSG currently at the moment. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brody Geske. Now, we've got a couple Brody Geske stories we talk about today, but the first Brody Geske story is that he is your 2023 Repco Supercars champion. Congratulations, Brody Keki won quite a few races in 2023. Had to hold off hard-charging champion Gisbergen near the end of the year, but unfortunately, SVG was involved in a couple wrecks in the final weekend at Adelaide that cost him a shot and an opportunity to win the 2023 Supercars Championship for, of course, he comes over to NASCAR. Now, Brody Keki, like I said, very, very talented. I think he's only like 27 or 28 years old, so he's got someone who's got a lot of potential to really come into play in these next few years. I would imagine I believe he's going to be back in Supercars once again in 2024, but still massive and huge accomplishment for him to once again win the Supercars Championship. I believe this is his first Supercars Championship, if I'm not mistaken, so congratulations to him on winning his first Supercars Championship. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Dale Jr. As it was reported by Adam Stern last night that Dale Jr.'s companies are restructuring as part of the retirement of Joe Mattis. And I believe that Tony Mayhoff is being promoted as the new guy who's taking over for Joe Mattis in regards to Dale Jr.'s companies. Obviously, we've seen a lot of big movement with Dale Jr. He's ran some Xfinity Series races as of recently. I think it's really cool and awesome to see some movement happening over with Dale Jr.'s companies. I think Sundrop is one of his sponsors, one of those sponsors as well, that are working with Junior Motorsports as a whole. They're making some big movement when it comes to restructuring for the company long term. And honestly, I think it is a good move to restructure and make some moves with your company, especially if your company is going to survive long term. You do have to make some moves to restructure the company. Honestly, I think this overall is a very, very good move to see this, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. As obviously, of course, over the weekend, the final Formula race of the 2023 season took place at Abu Dhabi at the Yas Marina circuit. And no shock and no surprise, Max Verstappen was able to win the Abu Dhabi GP. Now, he did have a little competition early in the race, and there were people keeping up with him like Charles Leclerc. But unfortunately, Max Verstappen's car was just so much better than everybody else's that he pulled out to a pretty big lead and was able to pick up, I believe, his 54th career Formula One victory. Now he's third on the all-time win list behind only Michael Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton. And obviously, we already know that he's a three-time Formula One champion. Now, Sergio Perez able to cross the line in second, but unfortunately dropped back to fourth due to basically some issues when it comes to basically getting a 5-second penalty after trying to, I believe, battle Landon Lewis to get by him. But once again, massive, huge congratulations to Max Verstappen on winning the race. It's a little bit of an interesting race, but the season in general was not the most interesting and entertaining, and I think Formula One is going to have to make some big movement if they're going to want to make the racing a lot better going forward in the future. Nonetheless, like I've already mentioned, huge congratulations to Max Verstappen on winning the race and picking up, I think, his 20th victory of the 2023 Formula One season. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Landon Lewis. As it was announced this morning that Landon Lewis has officially signed with Kevin Harvick Incorporated. Landon Lewis, for those who do not know, has been racing with Ron Horday's development organization and with McGowan Motorsports, and he actually won a ARCA West race earlier this year at Portland Raceway. Landon Lewis is only 17 years old and has also made a couple truck series starts with Roper Racing. The 04 truck ran at Mid-Ohio and also ran, I believe, at Indianapolis Raceway Park for Roper Racing as well. Well, the results were not that great. He actually nearly qualified, I think, in the final round with Roper Racing at basically some of the other races. And I think that Landon Lewis does have a lot of potential to race. I believe he's going to be competing in the Cars Late Model Tour, which we talk about here in just a second. But I think this is a fantastic accomplishment for him and great to see that Landon Lewis will be driving for Kevin Harvick Incorporated starting in 2024. His schedule has not been revealed at this point. I believe you have to be 18 years old to be eligible to run full-time in the car, so he turns 18 on February 26th. So we'll see how he does in 2024. But congratulations to him on signing with Kevin Harvick Incorporated. I think it's really well-deserved in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Pato O'Ward. As it was announced on Friday that Pato O'Ward has been named the F1 reserve driver for McLaren F1. Pato O'Ward obviously competes in IndyCar with Aaron McLaren, and he's been very competitive there. But Pato O'Ward in the past said that he's had aspirations to maybe race in Formula 1. So this is a fantastic opportunity. He's actually spotted Abu Dhabi, and as a matter of fact, he's taking part in the current test that is going on during the start of the off-season for Formula 1 over at Abu Dhabi. I believe Pato O'Ward is someone who has a ton of potential to be extremely competitive if he was to go to Formula 1, but right now the thing is there's not a lot of seats available in Formula 1. The only seat that's available is a Williams ride, and that likely will mean that Logan Sargent is, of course, who probably will be returning to that second Williams car in 2024. And unless they expand the grid and he goes like Andretti in the future, which of course Andretti will likely be going to Formula 1 in the not-so-distant future, I don't see Pato O'Ward having an opportunity and chance to go and race in Formula 1 anytime soon. He almost did go to Formula 1 a few years ago, but then of course got picked up by McLaren to race in their IndyCar program. But I think it's really cool to see that Pato is going to get an opportunity to be with the grid. And I think Pato will be a really good, once again, IndyCar, and he's looking to win his first IndyCar championship and get his first win in a very, very long time. Nonetheless, massive opportunity for him, and glad to see that he'll be the reserve driver for McLaren going into the future. I think it's well-deserved, and nonetheless, congratulations to him on getting the shot and opportunity to race with their team, and may in the not-so-distant future, may be racing in Formula 1, but as of now, that is not going to be the case, unfortunately, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Josh Berry. Now, Matt Weaver from Sportsnet and the short track scene put out an article in regards to Josh Berry and talking about working with Rodney Childers. Obviously, we already know that Josh Berry will be working with Rodney Childers in 2024 in the Cup Series, as Josh Berry will be joining Trackhouse Racing to drive the number 4 car in 2024. Obviously, we're going to be working together. They have been working together in the Cars Late Model Tour and other races with the Thanksgiving Fall Brawl and other races throughout this offseason as well, trying to get their communication working well for 2024. The expectations are going to be extremely high for Josh Berry, as he's going to have a lot of shoes to fill going into next year, as of course he's replacing Kevin Harvick in the Cup Series. But I'm going to be honest with you guys. My expectations for Josh Berry is I don't think he's going to make the playoffs in 2024. But then again, I've already predicted that none of the Trackhouse Racing cars are going to make the playoffs. But I do believe that he'll be the best performing driver at Trackhouse Racing next year. One, because Rodney Childers is a fantastic crew chief. And two, Josh Berry can get the best out of equipment when he races behind the wheel. So we'll see what he can do going to 2024. But it's good to see that they're getting a head start in regards to working together, trying to get that relationship working really well. And I think it's awesome and great to see that Josh Berry will be working with Rodney Childers in 2024. I think he's going to do a solid and great job next year in the 2024 season. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Cars Tour. I've already talked about Landon Lewis will be driving, I believe, in the Cars Late Model Tour, but Cars Late Model Tour made some big splashes yesterday. First, they've announced that ZMAX will be a premier sponsor of the Cars Tour, so it'll be called the ZMAX Cars Tour starting in 2024. But second thing, they actually revealed their 2024 schedule. They'll start the season off at Southern National on March 2nd, and then they'll race at Southern National once again on March 9th. I believe the PML Series will race on the 2nd, and then, of course, the Late Model MMSC will race there on the 9th. After that, they'll race at All-American Speedway on March 23rd, and then they'll race at Orange County on April 20th. Then they'll race Hickory on April 6th or May 6th, April 6th at Hickory, then Orange County April 20th, followed by Ace on May 3rd. Then they'll go to North Wilkesboro on May 14th and 15th, with each series having their respective days. Then they'll race at Tri-County on May 25th, followed by Langley on June 1st. After that, they'll race at Dominion on June 15th, and then go to Caraway Speedway on July 3rd. After that, they'll race at Hickory on July 21st, and then they'll race at Ace on August 9th. Then they'll race at Wake County on August 24th, then go to Florence on August 30th. Then they'll race South Boston on September 14th, then go to Tri-County on October 12th. And finally, the last race of the Cars Tour late model season is going to take place on October 19th at North Wilkesboro for that big race they do there at the last race of the season. This is a really cool schedule, in my opinion. I love you're going to some good tracks. Obviously, they were going to be returning to a new track. I think that might be South Boston, if I'm not not mistaken. There was a lot of worry if that track was still going to be around going into the future. I obviously do like the schedule. I think it's a very interesting look. They've got some of the late LMSC races and the PML races that are going to be taking place on their own separate days. Nonetheless, I think this is a very solid and a pretty good schedule overall for the Cars Late Model Tour. Congratulations to them on making some big splashes, including getting Z-Max as a sponsor for the foreseeable future. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the most popular driver award. Now, obviously, every single year, really since about 1950, 1960, NASCAR has had the most popular driver award. And I believe the voting is going to be closing in the next day or two. But NASCAR actually revealed the top 5 drivers for each of the respective series. For the Cup Series, it is Ryan Blaney, Kyle Busch, Ross Chastain, Chase Elliott, and Kyle Larson. For the Xfinity Series, it's Justin Allgaier, Josh Berry, Sheldon Creed, Cole Custer, and Josh Williams. And for the Truck Series, it's Hailie Deegan, Matt DiBenedetto, Stuart Friesen, Carson Osbar, and Ben Rose. If you want my predictions, I think it will be Chase Elliott once again for Cup, but I think Kyle Busch is going to put up a fight, and I think Kyle Larson's also going to put up a fight for the most popular driver award. But I love it. They've got a lot of younger drivers in Cup. For Xfinity, I think it's going to go to Josh Berry. Justin Allgaier won it a couple years ago. Noah Gragson won it last year. I think Josh Berry, how many people are excited to see him take over the 4-car, I would imagine he's likely going to win the most popular driver award for the Xfinity Series. And then for the Truck Series, I think it's going to go to Hailie Deegan. I think Hocevar will put up a little bit of fight, but I think a lot of people did lose respect for him after what happened at Phoenix. And then I think DiBenedetto also will put up a little bit of fight just because of the fact that he has a lot of fans. So I would imagine he's got a shot at opportunity. But we'll have to see what happens in regards to that. Nonetheless, it's really good and awesome to see the top 5. I think they're all well-deserving of being in the top 5 lists, in my opinion. And nonetheless, I think it is a very solid list overall, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Shane Van Gisbergen. Now, before the final Supercar race took place for him in his Supercars career, a lot of drivers went to reflect on Shane Van Gisbergen racing in Supercars. Now, obviously, we already know that Shane Van Gisbergen will be leaving Supercars at the end of 2023 and joining NASCAR in 2024. But I don't want to overlook the incredible career of SVG in Supercars because Shane Van Gisbergen, I think, won like 70 or 80 Supercars races, won 3 or 4 championships, and won a lot of races. And is considered to be one of the greatest Supercar drivers of all time, and many drivers do respect that. Now, a lot of drivers are really happy to see that he's not going to be returning in 2024 to Supercars. I believe that we're going to see SVG be solid and competitive. Obviously, he has not announced the schedule for 2024 at this particular moment, but I would expect when it comes to 2024 for SVG, I would imagine that he is probably going to end up driving a majority of races in Xfinity and trucks. He'll probably run an oval racing Cup, and more than likely the majority of the starts in the Cup Series are probably going to be basically on road courses with the number 91 car, and then he may run the Daytona 500 if he does end up getting approved. And then, of course, when it does come to the Xfinity Series and Truck Series, I would imagine he'll probably run the Kaulig Racing in that number 10 car. Kaulig is still not announced who their second driver will be for their organization in that 16. And then for trucks, I think it'll either be Nice Motorsports or Spire. I predict it will more likely be Spire. That's just my opinion, though. It is going to be interesting to see how things play out. But nonetheless, congratulations to SVG on an incredible career in Supercars, one of the greatest Supercars drivers ever. And congratulations to him on a great and fantastic career. A well-deserved respect going out to SVG. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Trackhouse Racing. Now, this was a really shocking report that came out over the weekend from Simon Patterson and Adam Stern. According to reports, Trackhouse Racing is interested in talks to go enter MotoGP in 2024. Now, a couple months ago, he was actually spotted, that being Justin Marks, spotted with Ben Kennedy at a MotoGP race, I think, in the U.S. or in Europe. And they were in talks to buy RNF Racing. However, RNF Racing contract has expired. So it sounds like to me that they were in talks to maybe purchase it for 2025, but it sounds like that deal is going to be moved up and it might get done for 2024. Now, I do believe that both drivers may end up sticking around with the team, or they might take a chance on an American driver like they've done with Ross Chastain, where Ross Chastain's been extremely competitive, who's volatile, but he's been extremely competitive in MotoGP and NASCAR, I should say. He's been really competitive there. So we'll see what Trackhouse does end up doing on what drivers they decide to do, but it continues to show how interesting Justin Marks is as a person. Of course, he bought Chip Ganassi Racing. They've talked about maybe will come back in the future, but he bought Chip Ganassi Racing's Cup operation. They, of course, have brought the Project 91 car. They brought drivers like Shane Van Gisbergen, then, of course, Kenny Raikkonen into this series. And then, of course, now they're expanding to MotoGP. And they've also had aspirations to go IndyCar racing, which is something that may happen in the foreseeable future for this Trackhouse Racing organization. Nonetheless, I think this is really awesome and great to see that they're doing this, and we'll see when it does get officially announced, but I think it's really awesome and cool to see that they are going to be expanding into MotoGP into the future, and an announcement is probably not that far down the road. It was announced that the team, because of the sponsor they had, which was a little shady, they're no longer around, so we'll see what happens in regards to that. Nonetheless, so glad to see the Trackhouse will likely be expanding to MotoGP into the near future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Denny Hamlin. Now, on Wednesday, it was reported and announced by Joe Gibbs Racing that Denny Hamlin had undergone some shoulder surgery. Very similar, Chase Elliott also underwent shoulder surgery over the last couple of weeks. Denny Hamlin's also undergone some shoulder surgery, and he's hoping to be ready for 2024. This would be a very interesting move, and this shows that Denny Hamlin wants to be a lot better and more competitive. Denny Hamlin has had a lot of surgeries over the course of the last 10 years. Obviously, he had surgery after he broke his back in 2013 at Auto Club Speedway, and there's been some other surgeries that Denny Hamlin has had on his legs and other parts of his body over the course of the last few years. The hope is that the Denny Hamlin can be more competitive with this move, and we'll see what happens into the future. Nonetheless, I think it's very important to talk about, and glad to see that Denny Hamlin is getting surgery to feel a lot better and can be a lot more prepared for 2024. So good move overall for him to get surgery and to get prepared. Nonetheless, I think this is a good move overall for him, to be perfectly honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Toyota. As Toyota has officially revealed their new body for 2024. Obviously, we've seen the new Ford body that's going to be used for 2024, the new Ford Mustang Dark Horse. But Toyota has revealed their own new body for 2024, and it's going to be called the Toyota Camry XSE. Honestly, I think this looks okay. It doesn't look amazing. It doesn't look fantastic. I think it definitely is a downgrade for sure from what Toyota had last year and in 2023 as well. I don't think it looks absolutely amazing, but it doesn't look awful. I think once a lot of the liveries and the paint schemes do get on this car, I think it definitely will look a lot better out on the racetrack. You won't have to wait too long, because next week at the Next Gen Test, this will be on the racetrack, as I believe Christopher and Eric Jones are going to be part of the Next Gen Test that is going to take place. Overall, I think it looks decent. It doesn't look amazing. I don't think it's as bad as people are saying, but it definitely could be a lot better. Kind of get old vibes to the old Toyota Camry when it came into the Cup Series for the first time all the way back in 2007. The hope is for the car to be better on super speedways. Obviously, there's more super speedway tracks than normal, and of course, there's going to be 2 super speedway playoff races, because they've not won a super speedway race in the playoffs ever. We'll see who is the best. Obviously, Chevy's going to be keeping their old bodies next year. We'll see what happens. Nonetheless, I think this looks okay. It does look amazing, but it definitely is a little bit of a downgrade for sure compared to 2023. I think it's a little bit of a downgrade from the last few years. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Chicago Street Course. As it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday, and Steve Phelps spoke about a lot of different things, I think, at a State of Sport address that took place. And the first thing was the Chicago Street Course. And Steve Phelps says that we lost a ton of money, but that was the best money we spent. People were interested in tuning in to see what was going to happen, especially a lot of casual fans. It's no secret that NASCAR made the move to go to the Chicago Street Course to try to attract a lot of casual fans. And to be fair to Steve Phelps, it did work in some instances. This was the most watched race on NBC, which I think had an average of 4.5 million. It was the most watched race on NBC since the Brickyard 400 in 2017. And it was the second most watched race of 2023, only behind the Daytona 500, which I think it had around 9 to 10 million viewers. Overall, I think it was at least a success there. Now, obviously, you want to have a lot of success when it comes to getting a ton of money. Obviously, they didn't make money on this event, but the hope long-term with the Chicago Street Course is that they can end up making a ton of product and a ton of money on this event. Overall, I think it's going to be long-term. The goal is, if they do continue racing, which of course they are going to be returning to the Chicago Street Course in 2024. They had a lot of weather issues that did come into play that were out of their control Hopefully they don't have any weather problems and weather issues going into the future, and we can see a lot of success with this event when it comes to profit. I think they spent around $50 to $60 million with this race, so it's not a shock and surprise to see they lost a ton of money on this event. So I don't think he's completely wrong here in this situation. Obviously, there's things that NASCAR could do for sure, but I think unlike a lot of things we'll talk about here later in this episode, I don't completely agree with Steve Phelps, and I think it was at least somewhat of a success, especially when it comes to turning a little bit of a product. So nonetheless, I think it's okay to see them lose a little money in the first year. A lot of times, a lot of companies lose money in the first year, but the hope long term is that they can make money long term into the future. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, it was reported over the weekend by V8 Sleuth that Kyle Busch could run a supercar race in 2024. Apparently, this is in the works, and he may run a race at the Adelaide 500. Now, how would Kyle Busch have an opportunity chance to run a supercar race? Remember, RCR has a big connection with Arabis Racing, and also that includes Brody Keki, who we talk about here near the end of this episode. Kyle Busch has been apparently this has been in the works for the last year, and Richard, of course, was actually spotted at the most recent race at Adelaide as well, cheering on Brody Geske, who looks to be part of the RCR family going into the future. It would be really cool to see Kyle Busch compete in supercars. There's not a lot of NASCAR Cup Series drivers currently who have ran a supercar. I think when you look at Marcus Ambrose, had a lot of success in NASCAR, but also he competed in supercars before and won 2 previous championships in supercars, I believe, before coming to the NASCAR Cup Series. Now, how competitive would Kyle Busch be? It would depend on what team he's with. I would imagine it would be one of the top organizations, and I think Kyle Busch would be pretty competitive in that race because Kyle Busch is one of the few drivers who can get behind the wheel of any type of car and can be successful right from the get-go. I think this is really awesome to see that Kyle Busch is interested in racing with a team like Arabis Racing. That's who it will likely be. It'll be next year at the end of the year, and this would be the only opportunity he has because, of course, the NASCAR Cup Series goes so long, he can only run in the season finale. So nonetheless, I think it's a fantastic that Kyle Busch is looking to race in the supercars. I think this is really awesome to see, and nonetheless, I think Kyle Busch will be pretty competitive in this race. I think it's a great opportunity for him, and pretty happy to see that Kyle Busch will be competing in a supercar race in the not-so-distant future. Pretty awesome and great to see overall, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kaz Grala. As it was announced yesterday that Kaz Grala will now return to Sam Hunt Racing in 2024. Now, according to Bob Pocker, Sam Hunt is still planning to run 2 cars in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2024. We'll speculate a little bit on who may end up driving for Sam Hunt Racing in the Xfinity Series in 2024 just a little bit. But I'm going to be honest, I am a little disappointed to see that Kaz Grala is not going to be returning to Sam Hunt Racing in 2024. Kaz Grala had a pretty good year with this organization. I think he got 8 or 9 top 10s. I think he got an occasional top 5 throughout the season and showed a lot of performance in racing with this organization. I'm not really sure where Kaz Grala is going to end up, to be honest. I would not be surprised or shocked if he's got something in the works. I know he's been working on some stuff for 2024, but I would imagine that he would have wanted to stay with Sam Hunt Racing. Again, I thought he would have a chance to make the playoffs. He never really was a playoff contender, unfortunately, this year. But Sam Hunt Racing, of course, is a team that did not have the best performance. And they, of course, are expected to stay with Toyota once again in 2024 as well. Now, let's talk about some potential possibilities on who will be with the team. I would imagine that Connor Mosack more than likely is going to be full-time with this organization next year. Connor Mosack ran a majority of races with this team in 2023, albeit he did not do amazing with this organization. He had a couple okay runs with the team, but generally throughout the year, especially on the ovals, Connor Mosack struggled quite a bit. I think he'll likely be full-time. This could be where a guy like Matt DiBenedetto goes next year as well. There's 2 rides there. I also could see some Cup drivers running with this team as well in 2024. It is good to see that Sam Hunt Racing is going to be sticking around. There are a lot of drivers who are available. This could also be where a guy like Anthony Alfredo goes. Anthony Alfredo does not have anything announced yet for 2024. And Sam Hunt Racing would definitely be an upgrade from BG McLeod Motorsports. So We'll see what happens. I really hope that Kazgarl can find a ride for 2024. It's a shame to see that he, in fact, is not going to be returning to this organization in 2024, but it's not completely surprising. I was surprised they hadn't announced him at the time. If the fact that they had made no announcements in regards had given me a pretty clear indication that he likely was not going to be returning to this team in 2024. So really disappointing stuff, but not a surprising shock to see that Kazgarl is not returning. I'm disappointed. I wish he was staying with this team, but it doesn't completely surprise or shock me that he's not returning to this organization in 2024. Pretty disappointing stuff, but not really surprising overall. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about horsepower. Now, Avery Hage on Twitter found an article they believe that Dustin Long had put out and quoted something in regards to horsepower, and he was not very happy in the tweet he put out. And this got a lot of attention. It includes an article from Steve Phelps being asked about horsepower and maybe adding horsepower to the next-gen car to fix the short track product. Steve Phelps goes on and says that adding horsepower may not be the solution. However, a few sentences down, or the next sentence after that, he contradicts himself by saying the drivers have said that if you add horsepower to the short track and road course product, you will fix the racing. This is what frustrates me about Steve Phelps from time to time. Look, there have been good things that Steve Phelps has done for this sport, but him not biting the bullet and adding horsepower to the short track product frustrates the crap out of me, because that is one thing that will fix the issues. And the other thing, of course, is getting rid of the shifting, which the goal for NASCAR is, of course, that this upcoming test that is going to take place is getting rid of the shifting completely and fixing some stuff on the underbody as well. I just scratched my head a lot with what Steve Phelps is saying because, look, Steve, I understand you want to save the teams a lot of money, but you've had drivers like Kevin Harvick and Christopher Bell who have went on the record and have said publicly that if you add horsepower to these next-gen cars, you're going to instantly fix the racing product in a big way. Remember how good the short track racing product was in 2021? That had 750 horsepower. You've already fixed the tire problem. I thought the race at Martinsville and I will say also the race at Phoenix were actually more compelling and interesting races. I thought those two races were some of the better short track racing and short oval races we saw in 2023. But again, if you want to continue to fix the problems with this next-gen car, you have to add more horsepower. Drivers have been saying, if you give these cars more horsepower, it's not the fact that these engines are 670. These are 900 horsepower engines cut down to 670 horsepower. If you add 100 horsepower, and we've even seen Doug Yates say, hey, we can add 100 horsepower up to 770 horsepower, that will make the racing product better. I know these have very similar horsepower in the NASCAR Xfinity Series engines, but they also don't have big-ass tires on their cars as well. So they need, in my opinion, to bite the bullet and go ahead and add more horsepower. It is going to be such a more simpler concept. The drivers have been saying, add more horsepower. It would make a lot more sense if they did this, but NASCAR, for some weird reason, will not bite the bullet and add horsepower. It doesn't make sense. I don't get it, and they need to overall bite the bullet and add more horsepower on these next-gen cars, because I believe it will fix a lot of the issues that the next-gen car currently has. If they do, I think the sport will be in a much better position. I think it will be. I think they need to add more horsepower, and they need to overall bite the bullet when it comes to that and just go for it. And maybe they'll bite the bullet at the upcoming test that's taking place because they're going to get rid of shifting probably altogether. Of course, they added horsepower to the intermediate package, which was pretty easy. So maybe NASCAR will bite the bullet and actually do it. I really hope they do because the short track racing product is not acceptable in my opinion for what we've seen overall. I think it got better for sure as the year progressed, but they need to add more horsepower in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about practice and qualifying. Now on Friday, Bob Pockers put out a tweet in regards to practice and qualifying for 2024. Now if you notice, Daytona week is still to be determined and to be announced. But it looks like, once again, in 2024, the attendance schedule shows the same practice and qualifying format they had in 2023 for 2024, where there'll be no practice for any of the super speed races, maybe outside of the Daytona week. And then, of course, there will basically be only qualifying for the super speedway race as well. It'll be the same 20-minute format that we've seen for the last years, especially on the Cup side. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm really disappointed to see this. We have seen teams and drivers ask and beg for changes to bring back more practice. Dale Jr. has been calling for it. Marco Andretti, who drove a couple Truck Series races this year with Spire, has been calling for it as well. And I think that you also need to add more practice for the Truck Series. You want to know why I think the racing is extremely crazy in the Truck Series? I think the lack of practice on the track plays a huge role in that, because a lot of these young drivers tend to struggle. That's why a lot more of the veterans end up doing a lot better, and a lot of the younger drivers end up not doing as well. I think it's hurt drivers like Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch needs more practice. If you give him more practice, a guy like Kyle Busch, I think he's going to do a lot better of a job racing in the series. I just don't understand why NASCAR will also not bite the bullet on this. In my opinion, here's how the format should work. I think each series should get a 1-hour practice session like they did at Phoenix, and they may actually add more practice for the short track package, which might help a little bit. But basically, they should have 1-hour practice sessions in a single format like they do for the Truck and Xfinity series outside of Super Speedways. I don't like the round system. I don't really care about the whole, let's basically make it entertainment. No, I don't want to see entertainment for qualifying. You don't need to make everything a freaking show. I know a lot of people do like the 2-round qualifying system. I'm not a big fan of it. It affects a lot of drivers overall, and I think that it should be 1 round for qualifying, because usually the first or second round has a big advantage in each of those rounds. It would just make a lot more sense to have 1 round of qualifying and a 1-hour practice session than do the 20-minute format. It would make a lot more sense, and that's what they should do, in my honest opinion. Plus, I know it might cost teams more money, but I bet you the teams would be a lot happier with that by adding a little more practice than having less practice, because it's going to help a lot of teams and make teams much stronger. So I really hope that NASCAR does bite the bullet and in the future adds more practice. But honestly, I don't trust NASCAR at this point. I don't feel like they're going to overall add more practice. And again, going back to the horsepower conversation I had, I don't think overall that they're going to add more horsepower to the cars, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the charter system. We've already talked about Chicago Street Course and the horsepower conversation for the State of Sport address, but Steve Phelps also commented on the charter system. And he says, we are all in on the charter system. Our race teams, by and large, are losing money. We can solve that with 2 key pillars. One is make sure they get additional revenue. Secondly, and not small honestly, is some type of cost containment. Cost containment is a cost cap. Let's begin by talking about the charter system. I know a lot of people are not the biggest fan of the charter system. However, teams are spending a ton of money. Just remember, Spire Motorsports purchased a charter from Live Fast Motorsports for $40 million. So as much as I think a lot of fans do want the charter system to go away in general, unfortunately that charter system is not going away anytime soon. Now, obviously, they're still having trouble getting the charter agreement basically renewed. We are expected in the coming days and maybe the coming weeks to have the media rights deal officially announced, and that will be revealed maybe this upcoming week at the awards ceremony. It could be announced in the coming days, as a matter of fact. And once they get that done, the charter agreement could come through. The teams are wanting additional revenue. But NASCAR, like I've already mentioned here, wants to put cost caps. NASCAR has already forced these teams to cut costs. There's less practice on the racetrack. Teams that basically can't build their own chassis and cars anymore. They have to purchase a spec chassis from NASCAR, even though they're still spending $300,000 to $400,000 on these next-gen cars. They're spending a ton of money on that. The easiest thing the NASCAR could do is increase the revenue for these teams. What I'm hoping is that the teams in the next upcoming media rights deal, they can get a bigger piece of that pie that they're desperately wanting. The teams want more money. That's the goal. I think NASCAR is wanting everyone to be a little happier. The tracks get way too much of the pie. If I'm not mistaken, I think the tracks get 65% or 60%. The teams get 25%. I think NASCAR gets 10% of that pie. I hope that the teams get around 40-50% of that TV revenue. It's expected to be a massive TV contract, more streaming coming into play, some more races on pay-per-view. If they give these guys more additional revenue, I think they'll be not as mad about going to a streaming network. Obviously, they're expected to go to Amazon the next TV deal, and they're also expected to maybe go to the Bleacher Report as well, which I think is owned by HBO Max as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens when it comes to that. Again, I'm not personally the biggest fan of the charter system, but again, I understand why it has to be around. Unfortunately, the charter system is a massive reason why a team like Junior Motorsports is not coming to the Cup Series. Dale Jr., I think, is just making up excuses at this point to not join the Cup Series, but still, I think it is a massive and huge reason why a team like Junior Motorsports has not made the jump up to the Cup Series at this point. So we'll see what happens in regards to the future of the charter system as 6 around. It is expected to be announced. Again, the charter agreement has to be done by the end of this year. They've got about 35 days left to make a decision in regards to that charter system. Nonetheless, though, the charter system likely going to stay around. It's interesting comments from Steve Phelps in regards to that said charter system. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brody Geske. Now, it was reported by Adam Stern and multiple different reporters in V8 Sleuth that Brody Geske is going to run around 4 to 5 NASCAR Cup Series races with Richard Childress Racing in 2024. Now, according to reports, he'll drive for this Erebus Racing organization, which will be the number 33 car in 2024. According to broadcast to the race that he is going to run, I believe are Sonoma and Watkins Glen. I think that was confirmed on the broadcast for the Supercars race as well. But this continues on because over the weekend, it continued with Richard Childress saying that Brody Geske in the not-so-distant future could go full-time with Richard Childress Racing at some point. Now, Brody Geske, of course, is competed full-time in Supercars and actually won the Supercars Championship, which I already talked about earlier in this episode. Now, Brody Geske, unlike a driver like Shane Van Gisbergen, has actually raced in NASCAR in the past. He competed in the ARCA West Series, I believe in 2015 and 2016. Didn't have a lot of success there, unfortunately, though, and then went back to race in Supercars, which he showed a lot of success. Now, Richard has also said that he would like to get Brody to run at least one oval race in the NASCAR Cup Series in 2024. Now, I would think that some people probably think that may be open for running the Daytona 500, but I don't think that Richard is going to have a ride open for the Daytona 500 for Brody Geske next year. I would imagine he'll be at a track like Pocono, maybe Gateway perhaps. I know he was at Gateway earlier this year, and he constructed this deal, as a matter of fact, to run his debut with the organization. So I'd imagine he'll be at a track like Gateway or something along those lines. But let's talk about the long-term future for this driver, because look at Richard Childress Racing. They've got really not a lot of room at the moment unless they can get a third charter. But I think this affects a couple of guys. Austin Hill, he's going to be with their Xfinity program for 2 more years. And Jesse Love, of course, just joined RCR. And now you've got Brody Geske, who's trying to get in there as well. And then, of course, Kyle Busch, who's going to be racing at least for the long-term future, and basically until he retires, or probably he's like 16 or until his son, Braxton, is about 16 or 17 years old. I think the driver you're going to look at is Austin Dillon. I think Brody or Austin Hill is going to be replacing Austin Dillon, because I think Austin Dillon in the not-so-distant future is going to retire from full-time Cup Series racing probably around 2025 or 2026. Richard is going to be 80 years old at the end of 2025, and usually you don't have a lot of NASCAR Cup Series owners being around past that 79 to 80-year-old age. So I'd imagine Austin Dillon is going to become probably either the car owner of the organization or take over a massive leadership role with the team. I mean, Austin Dillon is a massive and big reason why Kyle Busch is over at Richard Childress Racing. But going back to talking about Brody Geske, it would be really cool in 2025 if we got to see both Brody Geske and Shane Van Gisbergen being the 2 guys that are going who go full-time, and they get an opportunity to go for the Rookie of the Year honors. I think that'd be really awesome and really amazing to see. Will it happen? We'll have to kind of wait and see what happens. Obviously, Shane Van Gisbergen wants to go full-time with Trackhouse Racing. They've got issues over there. Not a lot of room in the end. You've got Zane Smith, of course, part of that organization now, though he's thriving for Spire, technically. He, of course, is going to want to go full-time, and they're planning to bring Zane over full-time in 2025, the organization. Daniel Suarez does have a multi-year contract with Trackhouse Racing, but, of course, there is a chance that that may run up, and he may run dry at this particular point. So we'll see what happens in regards to Brody Geseke's future, but I really hope we get to see him run full-time in NASCAR in the not-so-distant future. It's cool to see, though, that he looks to run some races. I'm actually really excited about this. I think Brody's a very talented driver, and I really hope that we do get to see Brody Geske run in the NASCAR Cup Series full-time, maybe in 2025 or 2026. I think it'll at least be part-time for sure, but maybe, just maybe, in 2025, we're going to see Brody Geske run full-time in the NASCAR Cup Series. But we'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to that. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the first of 2 major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Matt DiBenedetto. Now, I kind of talked about this and skimmed over this on the channel last week, but Matt DiBenedetto, I believe it was on Tuesday or Wednesday, put out basically a video and a tweet in regards to his 2024 plans. And he said in the same video that he is continuing to work on his 2024 plans. He blocked for people to also vote in the most popular driver, which of course we talked about. He's in the top 5 for that currently at the moment. But he said he's still working on his 2024 plans. He also revealed that he is looking at a long term and he's not retiring anytime soon. This is very interesting. We already know that Matt DiBenedetto is not returning to Trackhouse Racing in the 2024 season and was let go a few weeks early. Now, when it comes to Matt DiBenedetto, I do believe that Matt DiBenedetto does deserve a top tier and a really good opportunity with a good Xfinity Series team. However, the biggest thing it comes down to is sponsorship and funding. Again, I think there's not also a lot of really good rides available. Sure, you have a team like Joe Gibbs Racing that may be available for a full-time basis. However, a lot of speculation right now is that Sheldon Creed and Chandler Smith are more than likely going to be taking over those rides in 2024. Now, he could go there part-time with their All-Star car, but I don't know if he's going to want to go there. That's the thing. He could go to Call It Racing part-time, but I don't think he's going to go to Call It Racing unless he goes to their All-Star entry, because he could go to 16, but a lot of expectation right now is that AJ Allmendinger, more than likely, is going to be taking over the 16 car. So you have to look at the options that might be available. I've already talked about a team like Sam Hunt Racing. Sam Hunt Racing that has not announced their 2024 plans. Obviously, Kaz Grall is no longer going to be there. So maybe he goes to the 26 car. That would be a decent car. Would probably be a little bit of an upgrade from racing from Rackley in the Truck Series. And Matt DiBenedetto can get the best out of equipment. So maybe he goes to that organization in 2024. There's also that rumor that RFK team we'll talk about in just a little bit. Maybe he goes there. That would be a solid organization to go to, but I don't think he's the favorite for that team currently at the moment. You've also got AM Racing, which I think could be where he ends up next year. AM Racing is planning to expand to 2 cars in 2024. We already know that Hailie Deegan, she is going to be racing there in Xfinity Series on a full-time basis for the next 2 years in the number 15 car. She, of course, brings a lot of sponsorship funding from companies like Viva and Air Zeltzer, which is going to be working with her next year. Actually, Airbox, which will be working with her in 2024. There's also some truck rides that are available. One of the McAnally Hilgman trucks is available. But more than likely, they do keep that number 35 truck around. I think that might go to Roger Carruth, to be honest. I know some people were saying maybe goes to Hendrick Raja does, but I don't think that's going to be a massive possibility. At this point, I don't really know what the future holds for Matt DiBenedetto, though, but I do believe he deserves at least a solid opportunity. Again, though, it does come down to sponsorship and funding. I mean, for the love of God, though, Matt DiBenedetto, it's not like he's a bad driver. Matt DiBenedetto made the playoffs this year with Rackley and almost got the guy who won the championship eliminated. He was 5 points away from making it to the round of 8. And like I already just said, he nearly eliminated Ben Rhodes from making it to the championship. And had he done that, Ben Rhodes would not have been the champion, and probably Corey Heim or Carson Hocevar ends up winning that championship in 2023, had, of course, Matt DiBenedetto made it to the round of 8. Like I said, they let him go early, and then the drivers that drove for the team, that being Cherubin and Chandler Smith, kind of struggled, though Chandler Smith, to be fair, did get a top 5 in that car, which certain people justified that being a big reason to let him go. But still, the point still stands in regards to this. I don't really know what happens for Matt DiBenedetto. There are other rides that could be available, but again, I think they're drying up very, very quickly, and I don't really see Matt DiBenedetto getting a fantastic opportunity unless he goes to a team that we haven't talked about at this point. Again, he could go to B.J. McLeod's team or another organization, but at this point, I really don't know what the future holds for Matt DiBenedetto. Again, I hope he does get a good opportunity next year in 2024, but I don't know if he's going to end up in a good ride. It's something to keep your eyes out on for sure to see what happens in regards to that. But honestly, Matt DiBenedetto, like I said, I really hope that he does find a ride next year, because as much as I think that he is a controversial driver, I know there's been some bad blood and tensions happen between him, I really hope he at least gets an opportunity chance to run with a good team. Hope he finds something for next year. I know he's working on his plans to trying to get that sponsorship available. We'll just have to wait and see what happens in regards to Matt DiBenedetto and where he ends up going in 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about RFK Racing. Now, yesterday, the RFK Racing number 60 car account on Twitter put out a tweet for the first time in nearly 6 years. They are teasing a massive announcement, and it sounds like they may be returning to the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2024, that being RFK Racing. Now, some people speculated this could basically be like RFK's kind of way of going to Project 60, how like Track has done Project 91, and bringing someone made from supercars like a Cam Waters over to race with them. But no, this is the RFK Xfinity Series program. Now, RFK, I don't know exactly what they're going to be doing in regards to this and how many cars they're going to end up having, but Brad Keselowski has said publicly in the past that he's been interested in maybe bringing back RFK to the NASCAR Xfinity Series. For those of you who do remember RFK Racing's Xfinity Series program, let's just be honest, the last year of RFK's program was really, really bad. You had a mixture of 3 drivers in the 60 car, that being Austin Cindric, Chase Briscoe, and Dhabi Geske, and they combined for only, I think, 5 top 10s altogether, and they had 12 DNS and were involved in like 25 or 26 incidents, which was the massive reason why the RFK Racing organization shut down that Xfinity Series program in the first place. Again, it is really cool to see them bringing that organization back. Let's just hope that things go a lot better for the RFK Racing team when they do make a return, if they do in fact make a return. An announcement is expected tomorrow, so once this does officially come out, we'll probably talk more about it on the channel. But let's speculate about who could the drivers be. Now, you look at some of the free agents that are available, and there's not a ton of drivers that really are available on the table currently at the moment. You do have Matt DiBenedetto. DiBenedetto, though, I think is going to need sponsorship and funding, but maybe this is a ride that he's been working on for 2024. Obviously, of course, it is a very solid ride. If RFK does go there, they're probably going to get a lot of technical support from Ford. So this could be a ride that Matt DiBenedetto ends up going to in 2024. What about Frankie Muniz? Frankie Muniz, there was a lot of rumors and rumors he may be going to RSS Racing in 2024, but this could be where he's going. I know Frankie said he has a big shocking announcement that's going to shock a lot of people, and this could be that big shocking announcement. Frankie Muniz goes here. Frankie is, of course, expected to move up next year, and this could be the team he goes to. It would be a decent ride for sure, a pretty good ride. It would be extremely competitive. There's other drivers, like I said, Anthony Alfredo, who could be available. What about a guy like Jeffrey Earnhardt goes to Ford? That could be a potential possibility. What about some other guys in the truck series, like a Dhabi Geske coming back to this organization, or a Ben Rose? What if this could be used for some of those Cup drivers to get some experience as well? What about a guy like Caden Honeycutt? Caden Honeycutt drove, I believe, for RFK Racing in their esports program. I can see Caden Honeycutt, who is available right now, maybe going to this team as well. But you think about the success of RFK and Roush and what they've done in the last few years. They've had a career resurgence as an organization. They've obviously had a big year. Chris Buescher got 3 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series last year. And then, of course, Brad Keselowski is able to make it to the round of 12, and they nearly made it to the Championship 4 as well. And now they're looking to bring the RFK Xfinity Series program back. Obviously, the 60 car really, really struggled. But still, I think it's amazing to see that this organization is likely going to be coming back in 2024. I am really excited about this. This is really cool to see, and I really hope it brings a lot of success in the future, because you think of the history of that 60 car, right, before 2018. They had a lot of success with drivers like Chris Buescher. Chris Buescher was very good. A driver like Bubba Wallace, who actually ran for this organization for a few years, ran for them in 2015, 2016, and part of 2017. While he didn't score a win, Bubba Wallace had pretty good runs and nearly won a couple races. In 2015, nearly won Dover. 2017, nearly won Dover that year. Got beat, I believe, by Kyle Larson at the end of the day. But he still ran really good. Drivers like Carl Edwards. And maybe they somehow bring Carl Edwards out of retirement to drive for this team full time. That would be really crazy if that happened. It probably isn't going to happen, but you never know. Carl Edwards could come back for 1 off or 2 off in the Xfinity Series. That is certainly possible. I could also see him maybe just entering this car for the Daytona 500. It's certainly possible. But again, I think this is going to be for the Xfinity Series next year. And overall, I think it's just amazing and cool to see that we may be seeing the RFK Racing organization return to the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2024. Again, once we get official details, we'll talk a lot more about this here, which, again, that announcement is coming tomorrow, which I think is really exciting and cool to see. But nonetheless, I can't wait to see what happens and what they decide to do with this team. It's good to see the RFK is finally getting the groove back. This team is looking to win Cup championships again, and now it looks like they're going to be looking to try to win some Xfinity Series championships once again in the near future. So nonetheless, I think this is really, really exciting and fun to see. And again, I really can't wait to see what happens in regards to RFK's Racing's Xfinity program. But it's cool to see that it sounds like at this moment that pretty soon we're going to find out about RFK Racing's Xfinity program and find out about the potential drivers who could get behind the wheel with this team. Pretty awesome and glad to see that this is finally happening. They're going to be going back to Xfinity, it looks like, in 2024. Pretty exciting stuff overall. So, that is good for today's NASCAR news and a motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please guys subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my Patreon as well. Links go below that, and comment your thoughts on today's video. How do you feel about RFK Racing likely returning to the Xfinity Series in 2024? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Matt DiBenedetto, and where do you think he ends up in 2024? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I don't think there's many more videos on the channel today. Tomorrow there will likely be a Joe Gibbs Racing Team preview out on the channel. And then, of course, an RFK announcement video will likely come out as well tomorrow as well. And then, of course, on Thursday, we'll more than likely have another video, special video dropping, probably another team preview. And then Friday, we should have another NASCAR news video dropping on the channel. This weekend, we may have the Xfinity Series predictions dropping, or another video dropping this weekend you may like, but we'll have to wait and see. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.